Thank you very much, Fred. I'm very happy that you touched the talent issue at the end of your presentation, because this will be the next panel, the first panel at the ICCO Summit this year. The truth, which we know, is that, and we suffer also, is that the education at the moment, especially in the public communications business, is moving with 20 miles per hour. And the practice, what we do in our offices, we are moving with 100 miles per hour. And the problem is not with the difference of the speed we move with universities and the practice, but the problem is with the gap, which becomes larger and larger and larger every day. So that's why we decided the first topic at the this year ICCO Summit to be dedicated on the talents. Talents is the main issue, is the core problem in our nowadays business. I would like to invite Aaron Kwittken to run this panel, and also Rachel Bell. So together, three of us, we will try to discuss, and of course we'll be expecting your questions. You can interrupt us, you can ask whatever you want. Thank you.
Buongiorno. Can everybody hear me okay? So how do you follow Fred Cook, the Pope, and balls? And did you ever think we'd put those three words in the same sentence together? I think that's heresy for sure. So I'm Aaron Kwittken, and I'd like to introduce the rest of the panel. Everybody knows Maxim. Of course, Maxim might be the only one in this panel who has his own Wikipedia page, which is pretty impressive. And former journalist, diplomat, professor, chairman and CEO of M3, incoming president of ICCO. We could do, the next 2 days we can talk about Max. You might have been a spy, but we're not sure. That's in the Wikipedia page. You still might be, but we'll talk about that later. Rachel Bell runs and founder of Shine Communications out of London, member of PRCA, also voted the best leader in 2012 of all small companies by the Sunday, was it the London Times?
Yeah.
Yep, which is very impressive. And I'm the least impressive person on this panel.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm happy to be here. I'm a director and board member of the PR Council in the United States. I run a firm called Kwittken. I founded 10 years ago, based in New York, also in London and Toronto. And I've had the pleasure of the last 5 years of being part of a larger integrated agency network called MDC Partners. And one of the many reasons why I joined that network is because I felt as though if, as an agency, we didn't have a stronger social and digital backbone and really understand how to operate in a multi-channel, omni-channel environment, that we'd become a fossil. Everything that Fred said earlier, but with a lot more humor, is absolutely true. It terrified me. And that's one of the reasons why I felt talent was such an important part of this discussion, as well as experiences. And it's very hard to talk about talent without also talking about culture. And I believe in order to run a really, really good panel, we have about 40 minutes, 37 minutes and counting. I think it's really, really important that we don't take questions from the floor, but I surprise you and I just call on you randomly. This is just to get you guys interested in making sure that you're really engaged in everything that we're talking about. But I think that we all experience the fact that talent and culture are really two sides of the same coin, and you really can't talk about culture without talking about talent. And I think what Fred was talking about and what we want to talk about over the next few days is also a cultural shift in our own organizations. As a smaller agency of roughly 70 people across 3 offices, I've found it both enlightening, exciting, and also sometimes terrifying in changing my own organization. And I would say the last 10 hires that we've made are non-traditional people or not PR people. And we're out on a mission to find people who actually have very, very little earned media experience. And I think that no presentation would be complete without having an ode to our outgoing president, right, David Gallagher, someone who I used to work with 20 years ago. We've known each other a very long time. And I thought this pull quote by David was very relevant and very interesting as it relates to this panel. He talks about how there's clearly a shift from this leveraged agency model and really driven by procurement, where we're forced to actually put a lot of very junior people in order to make a profit on some of our client engagements. But that we're really probably moving more towards this liquid team structure, primarily driven also by clients, not necessarily by procurement, but by the CMOs. Like Fred said earlier, we're trying to get more into the marketing department. That's where the remits are. The expectations have changed, and so have the budgets. And I think that many of you probably are very familiar with this company called Google. I love looking to Google for lessons. Now, I can't say that it's necessarily an apples-to-apples comparison, but Eric Schmidt wrote a book called Google Works, and recently, actually, the director of people and culture at Google, Laszlo Bock, wrote a great book called Work Rules, which I highly recommend everybody here read. And we're all fascinated by Google's success and their culture and how they cultivate talent. And really what it comes down to is specialization versus generalism and generalists. And what I found interesting about Google and this book that Eric Schmidt wrote was that they really favor intelligence over specialization. And I don't think it just is true in a tech environment, but it's also true in our environment. And I love what they call these smart creatives. And Fred talked about creatives and how creativity is so important. And Google looks at it as this person who is able to combine technical knowledge, business expertise, and creativity. And at Kwittken, when we started the agency, we decided, potentially at the time, very controversially, this is 10 years ago, that we would not have practice areas, that we'd have a client-centered approach. And you might look at me and say, of course we have client-centered approaches. Why not? That's crazy. But the truth is that really ad agencies and non-agencies that are not PR agencies have client-centered approaches. Traditionally, PR agencies have very special, very practice-centered approaches. We decided to break down those walls and really create what we call multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary teams in this omni-channel environment. Focus on data, focus on insights, and take a lesson from the Googles of the world and try to be a very iterative agency and create a culture of rapid prototyping. And where it's real-time iteration, real-time measurement, all driven by insights and data. So I don't know if anybody's ever even heard of this word before, but I was kind of taken with it. Not a paleontologist, but a pantologist, which is somebody who kind of does everything. And when I got into this business 25 years ago, it used to be that we would hire people who might have like a superpower. So this person is really good at media. This person's really good at writing. This person's great at project management. But ultimately, we needed to know a little bit about everything to be good at our jobs. And ultimately, if you're really good at new business, then you really succeeded in the agency world. But the truth is that the environment's changed. And I think the first question, for our panel and for the floor, and I promise not to call anybody out, I was just joking about that, is really around what I would say is this a new omni-channel environment. Is it possible, really, to hire kind of, multi-specialists and generalists, or do we need to really more focus on specialists now? And is it possible to be successful having an agency full of people who only know how to do one thing, these one-trick ponies, whether it's social strategy, community management. They don't understand the authenticity behind earned media. They understand paid, and I agree we need to know paid, and we need to get better at that. But what does the agency look like now, the agency environment? How do we recruit those people? How do we retain them? And then ultimately, this very, very dirty word called utilization. How does that impact utilization? Because these people aren't always fully utilized. We look at them a little bit differently. So I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Rachel, you want to start?
Yeah, I don't think there's any easy answer on this one, because I can't see a future where there isn't going to be even more demand on our teams to actually have an even broader raft of crafts and skills. But I can see a time where we're going to have an increasing number of specialists that are guiding those teams in terms of inputting. I know when we very first started out building a digital and social media division, it was kind of set out as a separate division, and I know a lot of agencies did that. And I'm quite sure we're probably all in the same boat now, where obviously that's just a channel to the market and it's completely integrated into every single thing we do. So all of our teams need to be doing both on and offline comms as a standard part of their practice, where at one point we might have had that as separate. But yet we can't expect them to understand every facet of SEO and every aspect of digital. So we have to have a specialist, a master, a Jedi master that heads up that depth of understanding. But yet the demand on our teams is to actually know more rather than less. So I think they're becoming, in a way, bigger jacks of more trades, which puts a particular challenge in terms of recruitment, because we want people that have got an even broader inquisitiveness to actually delivering campaigns. But certainly at Shine, we try still to find those Jedi Masters, as we call them, that have got a special trick up their sleeve, that they can be a coach to another team on a particular area of practice. And for us, the sort of 4 areas where we have clearly defined specialists to head this up would be creative, because everything's bought and sold on creative, obviously, first and foremost. The second one for us would be digital. And then we've put in there corporate reputation and internal comms, because, you know, whilst we're talking about the specialism, Fred really eloquently captured that point that actually we're working into the marketing team, and there's a whole raft of different areas in terms of paid and different facets to marketing that we can be pitching for if we've got that really great central idea. I think the other reality is that CEOs now appreciate how important brand is, and how that brand now is having to run uniformly through every single part of their comms, internally and in corporate reputation. So sort of the corporate piece now is much more central as a consumer agency to what we're doing than it ever was previously. So it's an even broader, a broader set of specialisms, if you like.
You know, what we're talking is, these are the results, but the origin of the changes of our business, from my understanding, is that first time in the history, since 100 whatever years public relations business exists, our clients own media. And that's the big change. Because 10 years ago, the client was coming to our office and saying, oh, good morning, Mr. PR expert. I have an excellent product. So this product is very good and very nice. Could you please help me to promote this product to the media? Because through the media, we would like to reach our customers. And as Fred said, we were the masters of approaching media or earning media, because this was the main difference between the advertising and public relations 10 years ago. That public relations was buying media, we were earning media. But nowadays, the client rings the bell and says, good morning, Mr. PR expert. I have a request. I have a nice product. We did this product, and I would like to sell this product, and I own media. Could you please help me to manage this media? So that means that in our offices, we should have completely different qualities, completely different, even not only the web developers, the web designers, not only the social media experts, but we as the managers. We should know how to run them. We should know how to fill the content of the media, because the content consists of 2 parts. One is the text, and the other one is the visual. And the visual becomes much more and more and more important with every single day. So that means that this is the crossing point where we can merge with the advertising business. And I don't say advertising agencies, because advertising business was really very split in the past into different groups. So in order to present good visual messages, serving clients' media or our medias on behalf of the client, then we should have really completely different new quality of abilities among our employees. With some of them, we may split very soon, and we can take new ones, but the biggest and the most important question is how to run them. So we, as the managers, should change first, and then to require our staff members to change and to have new knowledges. But the most important change, I'm pretty sure, is that the ownership of media had been changed, and it will be the future trend.
So how do you, I think one of the challenges I think many of us are facing is we have what I would call kind of old school traditional clients, and that might be the traditional PR department, and then we have the CMO and the marketing department. And right now, I'd say at our agency, we're half and half. So I still need to have people who have kind of older school skills, and it's earned. And then we got across earned, paid, sponsored, owned media channels, right? So how do you navigate hiring staff and motivating these different types of individuals and having them interconnect when the client's needs are changing? They're very different types of clients. And how does procurement play into this as well?
Well, I think there's a massive challenge. You know, certainly there has been in the UK market for the last few years, with procurement becoming more and more heavily involved in trying to drive down prices within PR. And when we talk about trying to bring in sort of weighty specialists, which are an expensive commodity and hard actually to sell, it starts building a really tricky dynamic in terms of holding margin as a business. And I think that, in my mind, is one of our biggest challenges, is how we are pricing and selling for the work that we do. I loved what Fred was saying about getting rewarded for results. You know, Shine was started a payment by results model easily 5 years ago, and we've had success in selling it, and we've always smacked it on the results. But in honesty, I haven't found a client yet that loves it when you absolutely nail it on the results, and then you say, oh, by the way, that's going to cost you a little bit more, actually, because we've actually completely over-exceeded on our targets, and we've hit all your criteria. Isn't it great news? And they're like, oh, Christ, that's going to cost me 10% more. And they don't feel as thrilled as you thought they might for doing an absolutely fantastic job. And it's becoming harder and harder to sell that payment by results model because actually procurement just want to drive you down on price. And I'm not seeing salaries getting any cheaper. In fact, you know, this challenge for talent, which is so hard to wrestle with at the moment, to find people that have got the right attitude, never mind all of the right skills, and have got the right energy. It takes real serious senior time to find really good people. It's our stock in trade.
And I can't wait for the millennial discussion. I think that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be interesting.
It's, and, you know, and there's nothing more exciting than finding a superb talent. But to be competitive, we've got to be paying good money, best dollar, giving them bigger experiences. I loved what Fred was saying about his internship. We need to be doing more dynamic and exciting things for them. But how we're going to balance up that payment piece, I don't think, you know, for me personally, I haven't worked that out yet, because I'm finding that is the biggest part of the conundrum.
Because all we are practitioners, so the most important issue in our offices is how to make this business profitable. Because it's quite clear, okay, we will hire social media experts, we'll hire graphic designers, we'll hire web developers, we will train them, we'll make a nice team building twice in a year, they will have drinks, they will smile, they will whatever. How can we make this business profitable? Because when we go to the clients, the majority of the clients, they're convinced that they can do this job in-house, number one. And secretaries, advisors, or whatever, of course, we can post on Twitter, we can post on Facebook. It's so simple, it's free. Why should we pay a hell of a lot of money to a PR company once it's free and the social media are free? And number two is how to convince the clients that we are the masters of the content. Because if they're convinced that they cannot make them by themselves, make this job by themselves, then I think we will have the advantage. For my understanding, for many companies, including the international ones, even at my mother company, Hill & Knowlton, this is an investment process, because we should invest in new talents, we should train them, keep them, educate them. They are completely different than the ordinary PR experts or PR consultants, because they're much more creative guys. We should find a common language with them. But then at the end of the day, most probably in the next years, we must find a profitable model, how to make big money out of that.
So I think that's an interesting point. So last year, I retitled my business partner's title to Chief Creative Officer, from President to Chief Creative Officer. And because we're part of an integrated advertising agency environment, the ad agency that we had been attached to, called KBS, was questioning that. They're like, oh, that's interesting. How many people, just from the floor right now, have the role of Chief Creative Officer in their agencies? They have that role. It's quite few, though. I'd say it's probably less than, I should raise my hand, less than 5 or 10%. One of the things that we've struggled with as an agency is not just finding, but also mining and fostering a creative environment. And one of the things I wanted to ask you guys, as well as open to questions from the floor, what are the things that you're doing in your agencies to have people bring in these new experiences? We all can't have such a colorful rise in our careers as Fred. That was fascinating. I even questioned some of those pictures, whether or not you're actually putting yourself next to those people. I believe it, though. I do, but that was hilarious. So absent that, we try to bring creativity out of our folks. So for example, once a week we make each staff member do what we call TAD Talks, which is a small version of a TED Talk. We used to call it Tell Us Something Interesting, and they could talk about anything for 10 minutes. It's good for presentation skills. We get to know those people a little bit better, and it also educates us on something new. We also make people take 2 reading days a year. So they have to take 2 days off, and they have to read something. It could be anything. It could be a comic book. It could be a novel. It could be fiction. It could be nonfiction. Come back and tell us what you read and how it relates to something that you're doing at work. And actually, we were inspired by Bill Gates because he says that he doesn't have enough time to read, which is pretty amazing. A billionaire doesn't have enough time to read. So what are the things that you guys are doing in your agencies? I'd love to hear as well from the floor. What are the things that you're doing in your own agencies to inspire creativity among staff, among your talent pool, as we're kind of headed more towards this fully integrated kind of omni-channel environment?
Well, we have a really active CSR program in terms of the corporate social responsibility, which we call our random acts of loving kindness. And that allows people to go out and do whatever kind of random stuff they want to be honest with you, in order to help somebody else in another community. And they bring that experience back into the office. And sometimes we do that stuff, as a whole team. And one of the things that I think, it's not necessarily purely creative here, but one of the things that we do, which I love, and keeping in mind that we're a sort of 50-strong agency, we're not as big as some of you guys, but we make sure every single person has a role in the annual company meeting. So everybody in the business has a business objective, which may be attached to creativity, but it might be attached to HR, it might be attached to client relations or insight. And they've got a practice area within the sort of head office business, if you like, that they're responsible to innovate on. And why I think that really helps is it allows them to bring their ideas and their creativity back into the business to help us as a business, to help evolve us as a company, which I know is one of the things that is, pitifully hard time to find, is how do we get everybody engaged in making us the best that we can be when we're busy engaged in making our clients the best they can be. And by everybody having a business objective, they bring a lot of creativity, which usually involves a lot of dress up and a lot of funny outfits at the away day to bring to life their new tablet of stone for new business or whatever. But it does get everybody fully immersed and involved in how they're helping build the creative within our own business.
I think it's very simple, because it's much more simple, even the creativity issue in the modern business, than we can imagine. Because the first time also in the history, our business is absolutely measurable. And that's the beauty of the changes. 5-6 years ago, we say to the client, okay, we have a publication on the 7th page down the corner, and your company is on the title. And then the client says, okay, it's very good, that we have this publication. How many readers? Then we have 125 readers, but usually one paper is read by 4 to 5 people, so you have 500,000 readers, and it's so good, and then the client is happy, and he pays the money, and whatever. But nowadays, we know exactly how many people liked, how many people read, how many people shared, how many people were involved in a publication. So the big booster, the main booster of the creativity in our business at the moment is the competition. We see the competition. The world is transparent, thanks God. And everything which is transparent is ethical. That's the base of the modern ethics. If this is transparent, then it's ethical. So if we know exactly the reach of our messages on behalf of our clients to the audience, then we can report to the client. If it's not satisfactory, then, of course, we have 2 ways. Either to break the contract with the client, or vice versa, the client will break the contract with us, or we try to be more creative in whatever ways and approaches we use. The results will be shown very soon.
So do practice areas matter anymore? Technology, healthcare, consumer, corporate reputation
Matters
management?
more and more, even. Matters more and more, because you should be absolute professional in order to, first of all, to be more creative, and secondly, to reach much better results with the audience. You can do from a doctor a PR expert very, very easily, but from a PR expert, you cannot make a doctor. So I hire doctors in my office.
Somebody should tweet that, by the way. That's a good one.
And I hire in my office doctors to take over the healthcare companies of our healthcare clients. And also, if you make an article or press release in the past and you send them to the traditional media, then some of them may publish, some of them may not. If you tweet something on behalf of the client, if you put a post on Facebook, if you do a short video on Instagram or whatever social media, then theoretically it may reach 1 billion people at least, because 1.5 billion they're the Facebook users. So that requires much more professional preparation and education in our offices of the people who are doing the job, because they're as public as they never ever been before.
Yeah, you see, I'm not. For me, actually, I feel like the talent pool is much more integrated, and we're much more less about specialism in some respects, in that we've got this body of people that are fantastic implementers. And then for me, the specialisms now just sit as the dots above that kind of cross in across this pool of people. Whereas when we very first started, we would have had a much more linear structure around having specific teams with identity for each of those teams about what they were doing. I feel now that we actually have senior people with a capability that's a specialist that runs into a much broader. So I feel for us, our model has changed in that respect.
And are you having a hard time competing against, digital social agencies, ad agencies for these specialists? Personally, I found that we're a far more appealing offer because we're looking at it in a 360 fashion, more holistically. But I was just curious if you're having any difficulty.
Well, I actually think it's going to be the digital agencies that are going to struggle ultimately to retain their place in the market, because I think that all of those capabilities, and the advertising agencies have done a vastly better job, I think, in buying in talent quickly, when actually the PR agencies, where we're doing that, we're proving hand over fist that actually to integrate that detail that is our stock in trade and messaging into social media is an absolute natural for us. And actually finding great digital and social talent in each team, we have somebody in each team that has come from that background, is relatively easy to attract that, because one, they've got an awful lot to bring to the agency because they've got a master of that. But two, it's much broader for them than what they were doing in terms of the comms piece, the strategy, than what they were getting perhaps at the digital agency.
But it's a big fight every day with the digital agencies. And also the clients create this fight because they come to us and we say $20,000, and then they go to the digital agency and they say $2,000. And so the clients, of course, are attracted by the better prices. And this is the beauty of the changes of our business, because we should fight for our place under the sun every single day.
Can I just interrupt you one sec? Because it's interesting, because when I compete with a larger ad agency, let's say for something as basic and tactical as like an infographic, right? Everybody's doing those now. They're quite easy and they can be quite meaningful. The ad agency is like, yeah, we'll do that for $30,000 because they're used to making everything as a filet mignon, right? But our clients really sometimes just need cheeseburgers. Cheeseburgers work just fine. Yeah. Ode to McDonald's, Fred. And so we're like, we can do that infographic for probably $8,000 to $10,000. And I'm not giving up any sort of trade secrets or anything. So we're having just the opposite when it comes to ad agencies, because they're so focused on production and hiring the best director, and everything needs to be beautiful. But in our new environment, this transparent environment, internet, whatever, it doesn't have to be so beautiful. It just needs to be relevant and quick, right?
And result-oriented.
And result-oriented, right.
But I think the biggest change nowadays comes to the crisis management, because all of us in our practices, we are handling the crisis of our clients. And a couple of years ago, we had many hours to solve a crisis. You see it in the morning newspaper at 8 o'clock, then you go to the client, and the client says, oh, Max, come 11 o'clock to have a coffee with me, and then we go 11 o'clock, and then we have a lunch, and then in the afternoon, we publish a press release, eventually meeting with the media, whatever. So we had 8 hours to solve a crisis. Now, we don't have 8 seconds to solve the crisis, because if the crisis happens, then we should be so well prepared, so professional, so exact and so precise that no mistake should be allowed. And this requires a lot of education, a lot of preparation, a lot of, let's say, crisis management training and simulation. And this is the biggest difference, because if you promote a cheeseburger or hamburger or whatever, then you have enough time to think creative how to make it more interesting and more catchy. But if you have a crisis, then you should be really...
I was going to say, the thing that I think we probably sell most on, and the thing that, we're saying when we're doing our grad days, we're testing out as part of this, is insight and creative. Because in terms of leading the piece, as an integrated agency, if we've got the insight, then we'll get the right creative. And if we've got the creative, then we're the masters of the game, and that's when we get to sell more deeply, more broadly, across paid and owned channels. We get to hold the whole piece. And, you know, for me, if there was one thing that I think every agency should be and is investing in, is creative. And the bit that I would put out is the data and the insight that goes with it, to really understand that audience. And then from that perspective...
Or it goes before it.
Well, it does. You know,
Yeah,
the insight, absolutely, insight
right.
and the data first, then we build the creative. But it's those two aspects
Right.
that, working hand in hand,
Right.
for me, is the bit that allows us then to deliver corporate reputation work, respond to crisis work. And if you've got the insight, you've got the data, if you've got the team that can give you that real-time view, then you're going to be able to solve it. And having teams that can deliver you that, then that's, for me, the Holy Grail.
Yeah, I think one of the struggles we've had as an agency is historically PR people kind of go on gut. We put programs together based on our gut, whereas our competition has always used data and insights. And we've spent a lot of time and resources in investing in more analytics tools and individuals, so that everything we say has to map back to a key bit of data, which led to an insight, which led to a creative platform, which led to greater engagement.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Maybe we can take some questions
Yeah.
from the audience.
Are there any questions from the audience? Don't
Point
make
of
me
view.
just call on you
Point of view.
randomly. Elise?
What types of talent are you looking to hire for in the future as you look into the years to come?
I have a quick answer to your question, Elise. That the people who have sparks in their eyes. And no, that's my, because really, I can make from amateur a professional for 6 months, 4 to 6 months. But I cannot make from a lazy person hard worker. And I cannot make from a intrigue person or whatever a team worker. So that's especially in the, because what we do every single morning and night on Facebook, we share knowledge, nothing else. That's sharing of knowledge. And if we share knowledge, then to our offices, by default, knowledgeable people are coming to be part of our teams. So if they have sparks in their eyes, I mean, ambitious to grow up and to make a career, ambitious to work hard, ambitious to react fast, ambitious to reach results, then it's more than enough. Then we can teach them for all those things, and also they're changing every day. So we are learning every day, and they should learn, and we should teach them every day. So sparks in the eyes is my formula.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. We have a philosophy at Shine about hiring for attitude and training for skills, and I can't imagine that changing anytime soon. And if you can find great people, great attitude, we've got half the battle done. And we go back to that point about creativity. So much of our grad day and our internships and our interview process is around testing out that creativity. And if you've got a room full of really creative people, actually, people bring that creative, it just happens anyway. It's quite hard when we sit here and think, well, what do you do specifically to harness that creativity? It's actually half of the thing that I love when I'm sat in the office is all the jokes. Mm-hmm. It's actually people feeling free enough and without inhibition to be able to be cracking jokes, shouting across the office, bringing up their ideas. Because I feel if people feel like they're in an environment that's free and warm and friendly and the culture's there, then everybody will give their ideas without feeling judged. And I think our biggest challenge sometimes is just getting the ideas out of people rather than them having them.
Right. Well, pulse is certainly very important. And I think that one of the debates we often have internally is that we're not saving lives. This is not we're not doctors saving lives. This is not brain surgery necessarily. So I think we spend as much time investing in training existing talent on these new skills as we do hiring new people in. Yeah. And I think that's a very important component as well. There's a gentleman behind you, Binta.
Hello. In this new integration world that we are in, this is a very difficult business, and the clients, they don't understand us. as much as we do. We have to manage the own media, we have to manage the paid media, we have to manage the earned media and the social media, and they don't understand what are we integrating. So the thing is, how can we run up from procurement? Because procurement doesn't understand this, and go directly to the CEO or to the C-suite and ask them, what is your problem? How can I solve your problem? Because we are the only ones that can see the whole picture. If you go to McDonald's, you will ask for a cheeseburger or for a chicken burger or something like a burger. If you go to the McKinsey, you go with a problem, and McKinsey will solve that problem. So how can we run up from the procurement guys and ask for the C-suite to tell us what the problems are, and how can we solve their problems? I think this is the integration challenge that we have, that we all have as a family of disciplines, and we have to have talent to integrate the several disciplines and specialists in each one. So running away from procurement, I think, is the first thing that we have to do, and being close to the C-suite is the second. So can you elaborate on that?
And I would add one thing before passing it off to you guys. You also have to be willing to walk away from procurement and say no to certain opportunities or push back on them. And that's what we've been doing a lot. And interestingly, it's not goodbye and see you later. Now it's goodbye and they come back now. They say, well, what if we did it this way? I think there is an increasing amount of flexibility among chief procurement officers that I'm starting to see now that I think is only going to get better. That's just my own personal experience, at least from the States.
My personal procurement experiences in the last 2 years have been hideous. I just think, can we just get rid of that department? But to be honest with you, to try and get away from them is, I think, a mistake. And one of our planning days, we were talking about, we haven't done this. I just think we're too chicken to do it, is the bottom line. But we talked about creating a proactive 3-year procurement review where we go proactively to procurement to review the account, because it would allow us to get on the front foot with talking about fees and talking about best practice and briefing practices. The difficulty is, I think, is that there isn't a level of uniformity that runs across our clients where they're all structured in the same way. You know, we're not always working into the marketing department. Sometimes we're into the PR team, works directly to the board. Sometimes they've got a procurement team. Sometimes they've got an advisor that comes in ad hoc, or oyster catchers, or one of these sort of third-party companies that come in and have a look once in a while. And then sometimes the CEO just says, let's just cream off 10% of costs and let's go out to all of our partners and make sure they've just reduced everything by 10%. And when you're sat in that conversation, you know, I personally think I have...
Or they'll say, what's the value add that you're going to provide?
What's the value added?
Right.
But they don't really mean what's the value added. I mean, I wouldn't mind if they did mean what's the value added. What they really mean is, how are you going to knock 10% off?
How low can you go? Right.
Because we've always got lots of answers on how we're going to do the value added. But I think one of the reasons, you know, why I really struggle in those conversations is because, you know, there is a belief that procurement people are interested in a fair, equitable deal, you know, where it works, you know, a win for them and a win for us, everybody wins. But, you know, we have been at the mercy, I think, in the past, you know, couple of years where actually there isn't really a win for us. Actually, it's just a win for them. And, you know, when we're talking about, well, you haven't actually put your rates up in 3 years and they're putting a requirement to extract more funds out of that budget, it is really tough. And I'd like to sit here and tell you that I've got the answer to this and I'm about to tell it to you. I haven't.
I think Max has the answer.
Oh, great. Max got the answer. Brilliant. I want to know the answer.
I just want to say that overcoming the procurement is part of our creative job. That's how I understand this. When we sit in the offices and we say, okay, how to make an offer to the client, a good, creative, result-oriented offer, number one. Number two, how to overcome the procurement, and how to reach the CEO, and how to go to the decision maker in a way that he will understand the necessity of our content-oriented and effective job. So we must be, and it's part of our business, we must be very, very, very creative, because we cannot fight with the procurement. They have their rules of the game, especially the big internationals. You must creative convince the procurement that the local CEO should take, or whatever manager, the decision maker should take care on the results, but not on the budgets.
We have a client, it's a big brand, who part of their procurement department, they actually have an agency advocate, which has worked very well for us. And their job is to advocate for the vendor and to negotiate with procurement, even though they're part of procurement, which has been interesting. I think do we have time for a few more questions?
Yes, sir.
One more? Okay.
Yeah, one more.
Okay.
That's a very hot topic, procurement. But, you know, I'm posing myself a couple of questions. Why should a procurement guy know how to buy public relations? I mean, buying public relations for the procurement guy is something that happened, you know, in the last few years. Why they should know how to buy public relations instead of a piece of metal? They're very used to buy piece of metals, but I'm sure,
Or potatoes.
you know, with my experience,
paper.
no understanding of what we do at all. So we master in, you know, addressing public opinion and, you know, changing opinion of, you know, the people all over the world. I'm not aware of any attempt to start a dialogue with the Association of Procurement to try to understand better each other and try to teach is a big word, but, you know, help them in understanding how to better buy our services. I really would like to see this happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's a great idea.
And I never thought ever that I'd be begging for a search consultant, an agency consultant, over a procurement person, right? Because I used to feel that way about search consultants sometimes. There might be a few in the room. But I think procurement's take has been the new demon in that dialogue.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they make it hard for us to sell all of our specialisms. I think that's part of why it becomes
They
a
put us
challenge.
into a certain box. Yeah. Are we out of time, or do you want to mention one more thing?
Thanks a lot
Okay.
for our moderator. Thanks a lot, Rachel.
Okay.
I announce a 15 minutes break, and in 15 minutes, please welcome for the next session.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.